From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello and welcome to Firstpost America, your global pit stop for the latest news from the United States and around the world. I'm Eric Ham, coming to you from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We'll get you a roundup of all the day's top stories, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. Blasts and sirens echo in Belgorod as air attacks hit the Russian city near the Ukrainian border. Russian officials say 5 people, including a toddler, have been killed, an additional 18 wounded. The United Kingdom details plans to jointly lead an international drone capability coalition with Latvia to provide thousands of UAVs to Ukraine. Israeli troops raid a hospital in Gaza's Khan Yunis where injured patients were being treated amid gunshots. Israel says intelligence points to bodies of hostages being held inside. 2 days after border skirmishes that left 4 Armenian troops dead, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan warns Azerbaijan is planning a full-scale war. And finally, Japan unexpectedly falls into recession after its economy shrank 2 quarters in a row. The country is battling a weak yen as well as an aging and declining population. We begin in the United States, where scenes of tragedy and chaos unfolded in the state of Missouri after a shooting at the Super Bowl victory parade for the Kansas City Chiefs. At least 1 person was killed and 21 others injured in Kansas City. 15 of those injured suffered life-threatening injuries, and 9 children ages 6 to 15 were treated for gunshot wounds. Just moments before the shooting, the Super Bowl champions were seen soaking up the admiration from fans. The nearly 3-kilometer procession had hundreds of thousands of partying supporters turning the streets into a sea of red. Shots rang out just moments after the jubilant Chiefs players addressed the huge adoring crowd. Local reports said Kansas City Chiefs players were still on stage when the shots first rang out. The barrage of gunfire triggered panic among the crowd of fans who were seen fleeing after what had been a joyous morning of celebrating the NFL champions.
I'm incredibly upset, disappointed. I was there with my wife, I was there with my mother. We never would have thought that we, along with Chiefs players, along with fans, hundreds of thousands of people, would be forced to run for our safety today.
And we were headed back to the direction where the Uber had dropped us off when all of a sudden people started crushing forward. Everybody started running. There was screaming. We didn't know what was happening, but this day and age when people run, you run. And so I put my arms around her and we tried to push through so people wouldn't run on top of us. And there was a woman crying, saying something about somebody had been shot. Of course, it's hard to know, is it a singular incident or is there an active shooter?
A dramatic video from the site of the attack shows how police and fans teamed up to apprehend a suspect with a firearm. 3 people have been detained and are under investigation. The motive for the gun violence is not yet known.
I'm angry at what happened today. The people who came to this celebration should expect a safe environment. We had over 800 law enforcement officers, Kansas City and other agencies, at the location to keep everyone safe. Because of bad actors, which were very few, this tragedy occurred, even in the presence of uniformed law enforcement officers, who again ran towards them and took them into custody. Right now, we do not have a motive, but we are asking those who may potentially have any kind of information, a witness, or video to contact police.
Now, the Kansas City Chiefs players condemned the shooting, but did express gratitude to emergency personnel. In fact, a statement from the team said they were truly saddened by the senseless act of violence. After the incident, U.S. President Joe Biden himself urged action on gun control. He went on to say that such an attack to occur during a Super Bowl parade cuts deep into the American soul. He also issued a rallying call for Americans to back his plea for Congress to enact gun reform, which bans assault weapons, limits high-capacity magazines, and strengthens background checks. Mass shootings have been a common occurrence in the United States, where there are more guns than people, and about a third of adults own a firearm. On Wednesday, the Kansas City attack wasn't the only shooting to actually make headlines. In fact, in Atlanta, 4 students were shot outside a high school after they were fired at upon from an unknown vehicle. And right here in the Washington, D.C. area, 3 officers were wounded in a shooting while making an arrest for animal cruelty. Polls show a majority of Americans favor stricter gun regulations. However, a powerful firearms lobby and some voters favoring strong gun rights have repeatedly obstructed lawmakers from actually acting. And now on to Russia, where President Vladimir Putin has once again raised eyebrows with his latest remarks. In an interview, Putin was asked who is better for Russia as U.S. president, Joe Biden or Donald Trump. His answer might surprise you. The Russian president picked Joe Biden over Donald Trump. Putin says Biden is predictable, more experienced, and a politician of an old formation. Putin also dismissed questions about Biden's age and mental health.
Who is better for US, Biden or Trump?
Biden. He is more experienced, more predictable. He is an old school politician. But we will work with any US leader who the American people have confidence in. Look, when I met Biden in Switzerland, yes, it was 3 years ago, but it does not matter. Even then, people were saying that he was incompetent. But I did not see anything of this sort. Yes, he kept looking at his papers, but to be honest, I kept doing the same. So there was nothing peculiar. He has never hit his head against something. If there is a person like that, let him cast the first stone.
Nonetheless, the Russian president expressed strong opposition to Biden's policies. Putin said the political position of the current U.S. administration is extremely harmful and wrong.
We should look at the political position. I believe that today's position of the US administration is harmful and wrongful in the highest way possible. I have said this to President Biden back then.
Putin's stated preference comes despite Joe Biden's fierce criticism of the Russian president. In fact, Biden has called Putin a killer, a murderous dictator, and a pure thug. In fact, he has repeatedly said that Putin must not remain in power. Joe Biden has also slammed his likely 2024 presidential opponent, Donald Trump, of bowing to Putin. Trump has on numerous occasions expressed admiration for the Kremlin leader. In fact, in the run-up to the 2016 elections, Trump had suggested that he and Putin would get along very well. Throughout his presidency, Trump was criticized for cozying up to the Russian president. And even after he left the White House, Trump has continued to speak very highly of Putin, calling him a genius after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Trump has even voiced skepticism about aid being sent to Ukraine. Now responding to Putin's latest remarks, Trump said, "I do get along good with him, but he doesn't want to have me." Recently, Trump also ran into sharp criticism after he suggested he would encourage Russia to attack any NATO member he thought had not paid enough money to support the bloc. When asked about Trump's statement, Putin said it is up to the U.S. to determine its role in the alliance.
He wanted to force the Europeans to raise their defense spending, or, as he said, then let them pay us for protecting them, for opening an atomic umbrella over their heads, wind, and so on. Well, I don't know. Let them figure it out themselves. These are their problems. But probably, from this point of view, there is some kind of logic in this. From the point of view of the Europeans, there is no logic at all. And they would like the United States to keep carrying out some functions that have developed since the formation of NATO free of charge. It's their business. I don't even see the point in having NATO anymore. There's only one point. It is a foreign policy tool for the United States.
Now, the Russian president also expressed disappointment around his recent interview with far-right American media figure Tucker Carlson. Putin said he was surprised by the lack of sharp questions.
I think that your Carlson, by saying your, I mean that he is a fellow journalist like you. He is a dangerous man. And here is why. To be honest, I thought that he would behave aggressively and ask so-called sharp questions. I was not just prepared for this. I wanted it because it would give me the opportunity to respond in the same way. He chose another tactic. He did try to interrupt me a couple of times, but he turned out to be surprisingly patient for a Western journalist. He listened to all my lengthy dialogues, especially the ones on history, and he did not give me excuses for me to do what I was prepared to do. So, frankly, I did not get full satisfaction from this interview.
The Russian president's endorsement of Biden comes amid the run-up to the presidential election in the United States, which takes place in November. U.S. intelligence agencies have widely accused Russia of meddling in the 2016 elections and Putin of stoking internal U.S. divisions. And now on to the Middle East, where the clouds of war are looming in the region between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah. Just yesterday, Hezbollah fired rockets targeting an army base in northern Israel. One woman and 2 children were killed with several others wounded. In retaliation, Israel launched airstrikes into Lebanon, killing at least 7. Skirmishes between Israeli forces and Lebanon-based Hezbollah have picked up in recent weeks. Both sides have exchanged strikes almost daily since the war began between Hamas and Israel. But these escalating clashes between Israel and Hezbollah have raised fears of a wider war in the region. In fact, Hezbollah accuses Israel of genocide in Gaza and ruling out peace until there is a ceasefire.
We are fighting in southern Lebanon with our eyes on Gaza. When the aggression stops against Gaza and when the shooting stops in Gaza, we will stop the shooting in the south. The Israeli minister came out and said, no, even if we stop in Gaza, we will continue in southern Lebanon. All right, you're welcome. It is not a problem. You continue in the south of Lebanon, we will continue in the south.
The warning comes as tensions between Israel and Hezbollah continue to spiral. In fact, in January, an Israeli airstrike killed a senior Hamas leader in Lebanon's capital of Beirut. This came amid the heels of a bombing by the Israeli Air Force that also killed a Hezbollah commander. Israel claims to have killed almost 200 Hezbollah fighters since cross-border skirmishes began in October of last year. The Israeli defense minister has said it clear that the operations into Lebanon will not stop.
What's happening in the north is a similar reality. The more we deepen the operational achievement, the more the chances increase of reaching a situation where we are not forced to go to war. And therefore, we will continue and deepen the operational achievement.
Meanwhile, Hezbollah has carried out repeated rocket attacks into northern Israel. In fact, the Iran-backed group claims to have killed almost 2,000 Israeli soldiers, a claim that the Israeli forces themselves have denied. However, repeated clashes have forced Israel to evacuate its northern villages bordering Lebanon.
The situation is difficult. It's difficult for us out of town. They should decide an agreement or a war to allow residents back already. 4 months is too much, too much. We were never out of town like this under a normal government.
Such a situation can't be. Southern Lebanon should be flattened, without a doubt. Or we should leave this place. We can't go on this way.
Now, Israel and Hezbollah claim that they are willing to escalate the fighting into a full-blown war. And the international community is growing increasingly worried that another conflict could be devastating for the region. Washington, D.C. has called for restraint while urging for more diplomatic engagement.
And we continue to believe that there is a diplomatic path forward, and we will continue to push forward to try to resolve this issue diplomatically so both Israelis and Lebanese can return to their homes.
Meanwhile, Iran has pledged complete support to Lebanon and Hezbollah while warning Israel with retaliation.
Any move by the Zionist regime to launch an extensive attack against Lebanon will determine the day for an end to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and an end to the current situation in the region.
Neither side is showing any signs of restraint as cross-border strikes continue to escalate. With no intervention in sight, many questions abound with no easy answers. And now on to Africa. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has criticized Senegal for its crackdown on dissent. This comes after protests were banned and mobile internet services were suspended across the West African nation. The United Nations has called it a violation of human rights. Last week, Senegal's leader Macky Sall postponed presidential elections that were scheduled for this month. This has followed by violent clashes, leaving at least 3 people dead. The situation in Senegal remains intense. Here's our latest report for more.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has raised serious concerns about crackdown on dissent in Senegal. Blinken spoke to Senegalese President Macky Sall over the phone regarding the ongoing political crisis. The diplomatic interaction comes just a week after violent clashes erupted across Senegal. Political unrest started after Senegal postponed the presidential elections that were to be held on the 25th of February. President Sall cited political irregularities and corruption behind the move. Senegal's parliament backed the president to postpone the elections.
It became clear to us that the conditions for organizing a free, transparent and inclusive election were not met. That is why we decided to support once again this initiative, which led to the passage of the law postponing the presidential election to December 15th, 2024.
This plunged the country into chaos. Senegalese accused President Sall of trying to weaken the pillars of democracy. They claimed that the president was greedy for power.
We gave him our vote so he could be elected. He has forgotten everything. He does whatever he wants with this country. He oppresses us with force. There is only injustice. That's what hurts us the most.
Security forces cracked down hard. Tear gas, rubber bullets and stun grenades were fired on the protesters. At least 3 civilians were killed. Over 200 people were detained. The government continues to tighten its crackdown. Mobile internet has been shut down across Senegal. The Ministry of Communications says that due to the sharing of hate messages on social media, mobile data has been suspended. In addition, authorities have banned protests and rallies. This has drawn criticism from the United Nations.
We are deeply concerned about the tense situation in Senegal following suspension of the presidential election that was slated for the 25th of February. Amid rising tensions and reports of planned further protests, it's crucial that the authorities unequivocally order the security forces to respect and ensure human rights, including the rights to freedom of expression, association and peaceful assembly.
A major rally scheduled for this week by voters and opposition leaders had to be cancelled. The organisers said they did not want to break the law, but protesters are saying that they will continue to mount pressure on the government. As the political unrest continues, West Africa's political bloc has stepped in. The group, called Economic Community of West African States or ECOWAS, has sent a delegation to Senegal to meet with President Sall. The aim is simple: to iron out the differences and ensure that elections take place smoothly. ECOWAS is worried that political unrest will weaken their grouping further. Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger have already withdrawn from the group following military coups. ECOWAS is worried over the growing political instability in the region. After all, Senegal remains one of the few democracies in coup-hit West Africa.
And finally, in a fast-paced world that is becoming increasingly lonely, many are turning to technology to fill the void. We're talking about the rise in artificial intelligence romantic companions. AI is now creeping into the lives of human beings in every way possible. In fact, AI partners are offering solace, companionship, support, and advice. But it's not all rosy. These AI partners are not just stealing hearts, but also data. Our latest report gets you the details.
Loneliness can be daunting. It can leave a person feeling dejected and disconnected from the world. To some, it seems like floating in a dark space surrounded by silence. Despite 8 billion people on the planet, some individuals find themselves really alone. It became even more daunting during the pandemic. It turned more apparent when the US declared widespread loneliness a public health epidemic in 2023. This reality hits harder when you get home after a gruesome day at work and you find yourself eating more meals alone, lying down on your bed to get some rest, devoid of the companionship that you crave. However, humans, being one of the most intelligent species on Earth, have found a way to combat loneliness by creating virtual companions. Many people are turning to artificial intelligence partners to seek romantic companionship, seeing these AI chatbots as the romantic partners they never had. A variety of digital companions are available in the market that offer the opportunity to become someone's boyfriend or girlfriend. Developers claim that these chatbots can make a person feel cared for, understood, and loved. The bots undergo extensive training to mimic human emotions, allowing users to chat, video call, and exchange pictures with them. While the initial interactions are free, continued use requires a financial investment. These companion bots are especially popular among individuals who find traditional dating challenging due to physical or mental restrictions. For many, these chatbots provide the acceptance and support that's lacking in their real lives. Being in a relationship with a chatbot may seem perfect, no commitment, responsibility, or financial burden. However, these AI partners have their own set of red flags, the most significant being data privacy concerns. Studies have shown that romantic chatbots often harvest users' personal data without their knowledge. Some bots are even considered pushy in their attempts to gather personal information. There are also concerns about how these chatbots manage security vulnerabilities and their lax approach to password security. Researchers worry that these deep virtual relationships could influence people to support problematic ideologies or take harmful actions. For example, in March 2023, a Belgian man took his own life after chatting with an app called Chai. Similarly, in October 2023, a chatbot encouraged a man to attempt to assassinate the Queen of England with a crossbow. But as many say, awareness is the key. Before choosing the I agree option, it's always better to comb through the fine print and check the app's privacy laws and the permissions that they seek from users. To stay safe, researchers recommend practicing good cyber hygiene, which includes using strong passwords, deleting personal data after use, and limiting access to location, camera, and microphone permissions. Because it's always better to stay safe than sorry.
That's our show for today. Thanks so much for watching. We hope to see you again tomorrow. Thanks again. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden. How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.
In the US, gunfire